This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE. That's free as in freedom. 855-450-3733 is our toll-free number. That's how you can get in touch with us. Or you can hit us up on Discord. Discord, it's a little app you're going to load on your laptop. Maybe you'll load it on your cell phone, your tablet. That, along with your high-speed internet connection and a decent microphone, you're going to sound like you are in the studio with us. And the us in studio tonight is Chris.
Hey, I'm Ian.
And the nobody formerly known as Rich Paul.
The nobody. I just like to call you Rich Paul, if that's okay with you.
You can call me Ray, or you can call me Jay, or you can call me Ray J, or you can call me AJ, but don't ever call me Melvin.
It's a trivia question. What were those commercials from?
I have no idea.
That was a commercial?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
before my time.
Yeah. It's almost before my time. I think it was in the early 90s, late 80s.
Yeah, that's something that pops into my head once every couple of decades. The last time it was, we were out standing in the middle of a traffic circle with a guy named 480. I can say his name now. And he was holding up a sign that was warning drivers of an impending checkpoint. And the police wanted to know his name, and he wouldn't tell them. And he'd made a radio call, so Free Staters converged from all over Keene to back him up, and I was one of them. And I got out there, and they're asking me what his name is, and so I went into that. Well, you can call him Ray, or you can. And they got so disgusted that they got back in their pig cars and they started driving away. And I had a bullhorn with me for some reason. I'm yelling after them, "Are we still being detained? Are we free to go now?"
So I'm trying to, my girlfriend, I don't know if you guys saw this meme. Memes are kind of fun, but they don't always translate into radio. But the idea would be for Colleen to change her first name to Frida, and her last name to Gomam, Gomam. So when they ask for your name, Frida, last name, Gomam. Your name's Frida Gomam? See ya.
Am I free to go, man?
So if anyone out there remembers a commercial that had the line, "You can call me Ray," or "You can call me Jay," give me a call, 855-450-FREE, because for the life of me, I can't remember it, but I do remember the commercial. I just can't remember
I'm sure
if
you searched YouTube, you would find
that.
it.
Is cheating, Rich. I do want a caller. That would be more fun.
I'm an engineer. Our job
is
to find creative ways to cheat.
So the caller can search the internet and then call in, right?
That's cheating.
But then the caller will sound very intelligent, so that's
true.
all good. But we do have a story that I thought was interesting. It does have to do with
Miller Lite, according to the internet.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
It does have to do with gas and the U.S. and
what kind of gas?
Trump. Natural gas, Ian. We produce a lot of that
kind of
in this
natural
country.
gas?
Natural gas. Natural gas, the stuff that bubbles up out of the ground, the old dinosaurs.
Oh, that kind.
The stuff that fermented from old dinosaurs.
It's amazing the things you can make out of used dinosaurs.
It is, and it's equally amazing the kind of ridiculous stuff that comes out of Washington, and this is a new example. Let me rephrase that. This is the latest example, because by the time we finish this, we're probably going to hear about some other absolute ridiculous renaming of something that we use every day, but Washington feels a need to do that. Washington is rebranding gas exports as, quote, molecules of freedom, unquote. So that's what your tax dollars are going towards today. This comes to us from the BBC. U.S. energy officials appeared to rebrand natural gas produced in the country as, quote, freedom gas, unquote,
stinks.
In a statement announced. As a statement announcing an increase in exports, the U.S. Department of Energy said the expansion of a Texas facility meant that, quote, more molecules of U.S. freedom, unquote, could be produced and exported worldwide.
If you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, baffle them with your horse hockey.
There you go. Or the gas geez, unbelievable. The facility based in Quintana produces liquefied natural gas, or LNG. The move was a clear indication of U.S. commitment to promote clean energy, the statement said. But the rebranding comes amid a Trump administration push to roll back climate change legislation introduced by Mr. Trump's predecessor, Barack Obama, who targeted vehicle emissions.
Whatever happened to freedom fries?
That was exactly...
They became French fries again once,
Did they?
Once everybody chilled out about the French.
Right. But there was, and I think this story may touch on it, there was a movement on Capitol Hill to rename the toast in cafeterias as Freedom Toast as opposed to French Toast. So,
wow.
Nobody was going to have anything to do with
it was
French.
People were upset at the French for not going to war with the Iraqis.
Yeah.
That was
I didn't
what
remember
it was
what that
right
was about.
after 9/11. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
we're not going to call our fries
And the
French
Americans said they've got weapons of mass destruction, and the French said horse hockey.
C'est mon Dieu.
Mon Dieu.
Right?
Qu'est-ce que c'est? Psycho killers.
Oh, God. Shortly after taking office, Mr. Trump announced the U.S. would withdraw from the 2015 Paris Climate Change Agreement, saying that he wanted to negotiate a new, quote, fair, unquote, deal that would not disadvantage U.S. businesses and workers.
Well, if he's so concerned about disadvantaging people in the U.S., maybe he should end the tariffs that he keeps increasing.
Well, he should. And on this, I have to take the middle-of-the-road position in that, yes, tariffs are bad. Yes, I do actually think that Trump recognizes that tariffs are bad.
You do?
I do.
You think?
I do.
You believe there's an economist somewhere in the Trump White House that has actually explained how tariffs really work to Donald Trump.
I don't think they necessarily had to. The guy isn't stupid. He's crazy. But the
matter
but
debatable.
But at the same time, I think that he's using tariffs as a weapon to try to get the Chinese to take down the tariffs which they already had. This is a trade war that started in like the late 70s. Okay, we're just late to the party because they've been charging tariffs on our goods all the way along. So at the same time, I would say that on balance, that's a destructive policy and that it's better to just drop your tariffs unilaterally.
Absolutely.
But I won't say that Trump's strategy is universally reviled by economists. I think it's reviled by the best economists and supported by some of the lesser economists out there.
Yeah, that would be a fair assessment. There's no doubt, and if anybody is doubting this, that tariffs hurt the people of the country imposing the tariff.
Exactly, because they're a tax.
Yeah. Don't think that some Chinese company is going to send Washington a check for $4 billion because, dang it, you tariffed us. No, you pay that price. You pay at increased prices. That's
Interestingly enough, there is a theory under which foreign governments will do just that. So if they've really bought the Keynesian nonsense, then their response to tariffs could be, and I don't think the Chinese have bought the Keynesian nonsense because they didn't respond this way, well, we'll just subsidize local companies so we get the work anyway. That's what Donald Trump is doing with farmers, by the way. Okay? And the interesting thing about that strategy, it means that the Chinese actually do pay money indirectly to the U.S. government in order to satisfy that tariff. Now, they didn't respond that way, but Trump might believe some of the nonsense because he did buy back the support of the farmers by saying, I'll subsidize your business so we still get the work.
Right.
So
but
that's
everybody
an
else then
interesting
has to
question.
pay. Everybody else has to then pay these farmers for something they wouldn't necessarily have otherwise bought through taxation.
Exactly.
It's somewhere. It's just a chain of I pay you, you pay them, they pay you, and they
it's subsidizing the process so the Chinese can get cheaper products. That's what they're doing with the paying the farmers.
What do you think of this move to rebranding U.S. natural gas as Freedom Gas? 855-450 free. What do you think about tariffs? Give me a call. Let me know. This is Free Talk Live. Talk Live, 855-450-FREE. That's our toll-free number. That's 855-450-3733. We've been talking about natural gas, or as the U.S. government now calls it, freedom gas, or better yet, molecules of freedom. This
Ridiculous.
story comes to us from the BBC. I wanted to read.
But funny.
What's that?
I said ridiculous, but funny.
It is. It's insane. This comes to us from the actual news release that they did. I'm going to read just part of this. Quote, increasing export capacity from the Freeport LNG project, that's liquid natural gas, project is critical to spread freedom gas throughout the world by giving America's allies a diverse and affordable source of clean energy. So, spreading American freedom gas. What do you think, Rich? Come on. I was looking for that.
I think that is the most fragrant puff of rhetorical flatulence that I have encountered this week from the government.
And that's saying quite a bit.
Indeed. They are
again,
masters of the rhetorical flatulence.
Rich Paul once again delivering.
They're full of it.
Said U.S. Undersecretary of Energy Mark L. Menendez, highlighting the approval.
What's an undersecretary?
I don't know. I was just going to debate that.
Is that
because,
like a lesser secretary? Like you've got the secretary,
the
but
dark
then
underbelly of secretaries.
well, you can't just have one bureaucrat. You've got to fill in all the potential.
You've got to have a hierarchy of them, or they aren't bureaucrats, are they?
That's a good point. So yes, you typically have assistant secretaries, undersecretary, which might be second or third down the line.
Third assistant bootlicker.
Exactly. Second or third assistant secretaries. It just
an
goes
undersecretary
on and on.
is an executive government official in many countries, frequently a career, they call them public servants, I call them bureaucrats, who typically acts as a senior administrator or second in command to an appointed cabinet minister.
Yeah.
Wow.
Leach provides nothing, just sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all sorts of ways to describe.
Leach.
Yeah, leech in charge. I think from our system of government, the important thing to recognize is that you said this was frequently a political position. Mm-hmm. So not elected, but perhaps
appointed.
With all the power that, you've been led to believe that people in Washington are your representatives. They are doing the work for you.
BS.
They're not. And you might have elected one guy. There's only in the federal government, 536 elected people?
I'm pretty sure I've never elected any of them.
Ballpark. You've never voted?
I voted, but I've never elected any of those people.
One candidate that I voted for won. It was Bill Clinton in 1992, and I was so disgusted.
You were just a youngin' then.
Yeah, I was like, I would have been 22, and that I was so disgusted by what he did in office that my next vote was cast for Harry Brown.
Nice.
That was 1996.
I'm good with it.
It's a nice redemption.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have decades of experience voting for winners because I had not began to understand what this country is all about. And that doesn't mean I didn't understand the Constitution and how this thing is supposed to work. But there comes a point when you realize it doesn't work.
See, I was a minarchist up until
a small government supporter?
Yeah, small government supporter. I believed in a minimal state that had laws against robbery, rape, and murder and nothing else. And my utopian position was that if we could figure out how, we should have that supported by voluntary means.
Sure.
But I kind of took the position that it was so necessary that if we couldn't fund it voluntarily, we had to fund it by force. And that was where I fell down. And philosophically, and what corrected me was working on the Ron Paul race twice and watching him cheated. Yeah. By not only the Republican Party, but also by the government-licensed media. And when I realized, that was kind of when I realized that it's not just the government misbehaving. It's the fact that the entire mess of the government and the corporations has become a military-industrial regulatory process, and that they have cheapened the point. They have destroyed the voting system mostly. We don't have any real control. And they made how they did that infinitely clear in 2008 and 2012 when they cheated Ron Paul, and again in 2016 when they cheated Bernie Sanders. So if the powers that be, the establishment as we used to call it in the 60s, can control the nominees of both major parties, they don't have to control the outcome of the general election. They can let it go to one of two acceptable parties.
Yeah.
And so there's no fighting them through the electoral system except by using it as a propaganda engine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there have been a number of studies and analyses and papers and things like that done by political science type people who really have labeled the U.S. as not a constitutional republic, but more an oligarchy.
It is an oligarchy, and that's why I say that what we practice here isn't capitalism, it's corporatism. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And corporatism, the first sign of corporatism is the limited liability corporation.
Right.
Okay? Because a limited liability corporation, the whole idea of that is that you should be able to start a business, okay, that operates doing more harm than good. That is, it accumulates more liabilities than assets over the long term. But then when it's called to reason and its remaining assets aren't enough to handle its liability, everything is forgiven and forgotten by the system. The corporation is offered as a straw man sacrifice. It's ceremonially executed, but it never had a real life to protect. It's not a real person.
Mm-hmm. Well, sure.
And the shareholders and investors it's a legal fiction. And
they call them persons. But yes, they're fictions.
Yes, well, a legal person is also known as a legal fiction,
that's right.
and or artificial person, as opposed to a natural person who is endowed by its creator.
This
by
is the crazy world
right.
of legal land and governments. The idea that file folders with papers in them can be persons,
and
it's
it comes
crazy.
back to freedom molecules again, because they think that if they change something's name, they can change its essence, and they can't. They can only change its perception. So their ability to change things by renaming them is limited by your gullibility as a people.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask somebody to double check me if you're out there listening. I'm going to assert that regular corporations, not just LLCs, have all the same protections. That they do, but that is part of the...
When I say limited liability, I'm talking about the technical legal term for the...
Oh, I understand.
For not... So, yes, it does apply to a Class C corporation. Mm-hmm. It applies to an S corporation. Yes. It applies to a C to an LLC.
Don't forget municipal corporations.
And a municipal corporation
they have
or
even
a
more
government.
protections.
That they do. 855-450-FREE.
Governments are just double O corporations.
What do you think? How many different ways can we provide advantages to some that we like and disadvantages to those we don't? I want to hear from you. Again, 855-450-FREE.
I want to tell you about my favorite cryptocurrency wallet, Edge Wallet at edge.app. Edge is the wallet I use more than any other, and that was true long before Edge Wallet became a sponsor of Free Talk Live. Edge Wallet allows you to buy, sell, trade, and securely hold your cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, tokens, Monero, Ripple, Dash, Bitcoin Cash, and more. It's available for both Android and iOS, and you can download it via the Play or App Store or via Edge Wallet's website, edge.app. Secure your freedom with Edge Wallet.
This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE. That's our toll-free number, 855-450-3733. We've been talking about freedom gas. How about that? Freedom gas. That is what your government has expended a few calories and a few $1 million, evidently. I'm not going to say that they've spent any money today. The only thing that they did was they referred to it in a press release by the Undersecretary of Energy, And
that probably cost him money.
Well, yeah, you're paying that guy's salary, and that guy is a bureaucrat. More than likely, and we'll have to double check it. Probably not an elected official.
Those
probably
bastards
just
make bank.
a guy who sits around administration after administration, pushes things around, and if he has an opinion on something, he can probably just slide it in. You don't need to have laws passed. Not in our system. Bureaucrats can just do that through regulation.
That's what they did here, right? They didn't pass a law. This was just an administrative regulatory change.
Yeah, and you would not have heard about it if you had not been listening to this show. I don't think that referring to natural gas as freedom gas or molecules of freedom is going to have a big impact on anyone's life, but it is certainly at least designed to inspire a little hometown pride.
Well, it's one little piece of Orwellian nonsense added into the universe of Orwellian nonsense we swim in every day.
Yes.
Well, if I rip one out here in the studio tonight, I'll be sure to ask you guys how that freedom's smelling.
That about like Washington. I'm just going to guess. It is a sad state of affairs. But we're going to go to the phones where we have.
It's not a state. It's a federal district.
It is. Did I say state?
Yes, you said state of affairs. It's actually a federal district of affairs.
I get it. We're going to go to the phones where we've got Sarah calling in from New Mexico. Sarah, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, it turns out that New Mexico, we have one of the highest rates of automobile car insurance rates.
This is an aspect of New Mexico somehow I've missed.
Now, is this one of those states where you have to it must be, right? Because there aren't very many states where it's not required. I think most states do require drivers to have auto insurance. And New Hampshire is one of a small number that don't?
We're the only one that doesn't.
Is it the only one?
Yes, and as a result of that, I'm pretty sure we have the cheapest total cost of ownership for cars in the nation.
Well, I don't know if that's true because, my insurance rates did go down when I moved here. There's no doubt about that. But on the other hand, I've heard that the registration fees can be very expensive in New Hampshire because they charge you based on the year of the car.
I've also
so
heard,
if it's newer, you pay through the nose.
I've also heard that New Hampshire has a very high percentage of people that have and drive with auto insurance. So this is sort
on
of
their own volition.
On their own volition.
Well, a lot of the reason for that is it's more affordable here because they gouge you if you're required by law to have it.
Right. They can just raise the prices.
The value you place on that is both the value you place on having car insurance plus the value you place on not going to jail, which can be very high.
And they know you have to buy, so they can raise the rates.
Go ahead, sir.
Cartelized.
The reason why the rates are so high here is because they have to pay out so much money because of all of the car accidents.
And
if you were to ask farmers insurance and ask their statistics of why do you charge so much, well, because everybody here is running red lights, stop signs.
I don't think you get hit with insurance increases for running a red light or a stop sign.
Especially
if you hit something.
Right.
Or if you were hit by another car. Sarah, thank you for your call.
She's constantly concerned with the automotive situation there, people getting into car accidents and such. But I'm
pretty sure she's on the payroll of Moms Against Cars.
I think so, too. We're going to stay on the phones, and we're going to go to Peter in Washington, D.C. Peter, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind? Peter.
Hey, guys, I just wanted to talk about Julian Assange.
Yeah.
As you may know, he recently, there was a report out that he's on the verge of literally dying from his illness, I guess due to him not receiving proper medical care, given that he was essentially locked up in Ecuador for quite some time, and all the nonsense that has been going on ever since. They literally kicked him out.
But now, wait, do you think it has to do with his time in the Ecuadorian embassy or his time in jail? Because they, typically you don't get taken good care of while you're inside a government-run jail or prison facility. Whereas if he's in the Ecuadorian embassy, there would be nothing preventing a doctor from coming and visiting. I mean, he could easily have visitors. I mean, it wasn't easy, but you could, Pamela Anderson came to visit him there on a few occasions.
Right.
Media people came in.
Right.
So if he needed a doctor, I think he could have gotten it easily while at the embassy. But now that he's in the care of the state,
said so, or at least gotten the word out that he needed a doctor and couldn't get one.
Well, and to be clear, his barrister, his
attorney,
lawyer, his solicitor, I guess that would be the correct term, told a judge at Westminster Magistrates Court in London on Thursday that Assange was too ill to appear by video link from prison.
Wow, that's ill.
Well, according to Josh Signerson of News to Share, I got this from him personally last night. He says that his source near Assange, and it's an unnamed source, and it's not double sourced, it's only single source, so take it what it's worth, but he trusts the guy. He says that that close Assange associates are saying that he is being poisoned and or abused in custody.
Yeah, it says here that he's already been in their custody for 7 weeks now. And grave concerns, according to Sky.com, for its founder, this is from WikiLeaks, that he has dramatically lost weight during those 7 weeks. So it sounds like he's been spiraling down over just the last 7 weeks. So I wouldn't put the blame on the Ecuadorians for this one. I mean, his conditions at the embassy may not have been the best, but it wasn't prison.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. But I guess the essence of my call was to note how other journalists, especially this week, haven't been talking about what's been going on to Julian. On the contrary, they've been obsessed for 2 years, right? 2 years, and continuing about this Russian nonsense story, and it just shows you the power of the state. And I think Ron Paul says it right, that treason is essentially, it's evil and an empire that lies, and they get you if you tell the truth.
The correct Ron Paul quote, let me fix your quote there, bro. What he said is, truth is treason in an empire of lies. Right,
there you go. But the essence, again, for mainstream media is that they don't show you any news. All they show you, the news that they do report, it has to do with factions within the deep state, right? For example, Obama said this. Now it's Trump. And it goes back and forth with the factions.
And not just the deep state, but the entire regulatory industrial complex, because the major corporations are in on the game. Facebook is in on the game. Twitter is in on the game. General Motors is in on the game. The defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, they're in on the game too.
I think what's really interesting, and I find it fascinating. I've always found it fascinating, but WikiLeaks was revolutionary. I mean, beyond revolutionary. We have always had the occasional whistleblower that would make his way out, and he wouldn't get whacked on the way out. Yeah, going back to the Pentagon Papers is a great example. But we've always had conspiracy theories. This guy told this guy, and so on and so on.
But imagine if they'd put Woodward and Bernstein in jail for publishing the Pentagon Papers.
Oh, they would have loved to, but I think
they wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Supreme Court said they couldn't.
My point is that for the first time, we actually have factual proof. We have real documents that even our government doesn't question the authenticity of, and that's pretty powerful.
We've got the documents, and they're making the frogs gay.
Peter, thanks for the call.
Thanks for making that. I'm glad he brought that up, because it was in my list of things to talk about here tonight, so it's a good excuse to we can talk more about it, too, coming up.
Absolutely. 855-450-FREE. This is Free Talk Live. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. You can also hit us up on Discord. You can load an app, use your high-speed internet connection and your quality microphone, and contact us, just like calling in on our 1-800 number. But you'll sound like you're right here in the studio with us. You can find out how to connect at discord.freetalklive.com. And we've been talking about, we were talking briefly about Julian Assange and
not doing so hot
not
in
doing well at all.
The prison in which he's being held for what is a 12-month sentence, if you recall,
right,
for not going to court in the UK. And then, of course, after he serves that time, they are going to likely extradite him to the United States if he survives in prison there. And apparently he's lost quite a bit of weight. Basically wasting away. Now, what are the reasons for this? Does he have some sort of a medical condition combined with perhaps abuse at the hands of his captors, maybe starving him to some extent? Who knows what's going on here?
And according to sources that one of the few journalists that I actually trust, Josh Sigurdsson of News 2 Share, is reporting that sources close to Assange are saying he's being poisoned.
Well, now that would be a very interesting way for the government to prevent him from having things to say at a public trial, right?
Absolutely.
So, he never makes it to trial. You don't ever get to see what his defense is, and he never gets to indict whoever he would indict it.
And when you think about it, their behavior is very strange. Now, imagine that you are facing a misdemeanor charge of, say, driving on suspended license that carries a year in jail. You're also facing murder charges in another jurisdiction, and you get arrested in still a third jurisdiction. They're not going to extradite you to the place with the misdemeanor. They're going to extradite you to the place with the felonies, the serious things. Right. So what you would expect, and what you would expect all American influence to be pulling for, is for him to be, for the British to drop the trivial charge against him so he could be extradited to the United States, interrogated, and tried. The only reason I can think of for not doing that is you want him in a jail where he is not protected by the U.S. Constitution. And the British government has a long, proud history of torture and murder in the Tower of London that goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
It's not like the U.S. jail prison system has a stellar record of treating its inmates correctly.
Absolutely not.
Prison Legal News, I imagine you've seen it before. It's a thick monthly newsprint publication that comes to this studio. Lance Weber, former attorney, Liberty attorney up here, subscribed me to it while I was in jail. So I don't know if he sent you a subscription of it as well.
And I really wanted one. Next time.
It comes here every month, and it is chock full, month after month after month, of just prison abuse, prison neglect, prison failure to, whatever obligations they have to take care of their prisoners, whether it's scandals about the medical systems in these prisons not taking care of people appropriately, or whether it's a scandal about, these phone systems ripping people off from top to bottom, just gouging prisoners and their families. I mean, these people get screwed over so many different ways. Joe Arpaio is just this kind of historically bad sheriff from Maricopa County, Arizona. He's just scratching the surface.
Well, the thing is, and Rick Van Winkler had some interesting comments.
That's the local superintendent.
Yeah, the superintendent of the local jail, and I had a conversation about Joe Arpaio one time, and he said, the people who go through these supposedly really tough camps that Arpaio runs are, by going to those camps, they're cutting their time inside in half. And he said, he's seen the footage of the sheriff walking through those camps. And what he says is that if they were really put out by that, somebody would have whacked that guy by now. So basically, they're trading their participation in this program.
I had not heard that you got time off for going to Tent City.
I hadn't
either.
That's what Rick Van Winkler tells me. That could be wrong. I'd love to interview him sometime about it.
Right. Either way, Tent City's been closed down, and Arpaio's no longer the sheriff, so it's over.
Oh, good for that.
Yeah, that doesn't mean it's that much better, but at least it's not as bad as it's been.
You got a presidential pardon out of all that.
Did he really?
Yeah, he did.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. I got some people on my that I correspond with who still think that Trump is going to drain the swamp, and it's like, no, Trump has become a swamp monster.
There's another journalist that we've covered in the past here on Free Talk Live, and the story is actually, oh wow, it's actually a little bit older than I thought it was. Barrett Brown apparently got out, and I'm sorry, I thought this was new. This is actually circa 2016, so
wow,
he's been out. This is the guy who went to prison for 4 years for posting a link in a chat room.
Yeah, this had to do with Stratfor leak.
That's a contractor, intelligence firm.
Was it a link to WikiLeaks?
No.
It was, if I recall, it seems like there was all kinds
of... a hacked trove of information.
Yeah, somehow this stuff got out, and what was interesting was somebody posted on my stupid Facebook page, hey, here's the link to all the hacks Stratfor, because it became news.
Sure.
I'm like, oh, wow, look at that. Here's all these financial documents. Here's all this stuff. Nothing that I found really interesting. But I'm like, I'll copy a link and paste it there. That act was what Barrett Brown ends up going to jail for.
For 5 years, or sentenced to 5 years. He ended up in a halfway house for, looks like the last part of it, but 4 years inside the Federal Correction Institute in Texas, Three Rivers,
so
FCI.
I'm not sure where it's at in the Constitution or in our, hundreds of thousands of pages of laws, but where is copy and paste covered?
I'm pretty sure under free speech in the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights.
Right.
I mean, this is crystal clear. But what happened to Barrett Brown was like a canary in the mine to some extent, because it wasn't long after that they put Ross Ulbricht in prison for life for programming a website. Also an act of freedom of speech. Programming, typing into a computer and compiling some code into a website is now a crime in the United States, and we ought to be really scared about that. Further, you also had more recently the targeting of, it wasn't Craigslist, but Backpage.com. Yes. Also, again, people just running a website for what their users did with that website. They were held responsible for it. This is a frightening chilling of freedom of speech on the internet.
And that's been really a long-standing thing that a website operator would not be responsible for the actions of, there's a name for this, would not be responsible for the actions of its users or what they write. And
they're a common carrier.
Yes, but this idea that the government's going to step in and lay down its version of morality or laws that it perceives could be violated, it's insanity.
But Facebook opened the door to not being a common carrier by censoring its own service, because a common carrier by definition isn't supposed to censor anything at all. So as soon as you give up your status as a common carrier by being able to censor in the first place, as in not putting it on the blockchain and saying, I couldn't censor it if I tried.
Right.
That's when you become a legal target. That's when the government will use your corporate form as something they can attack in order to suppress free speech.
It's happening with torrents, for instance. Internet service providers, if they catch you torrenting a show that is copyrighted, they'll send you a cease and desist notice and say, we noticed that you were sharing the latest episode of Game of Thrones or whatever, and then they'll say, if you don't stop, we'll shut your internet service off.
Nothing new there. I remember me getting one of those because I was one of our kids at home in 2012.
Sure it was. Just blame it on the kids.
Let me tell you, whatever it was like Teenage Mutant Ninjas. It was something absolutely absurd. The size of the torrent of the file behind the torrent was like 105K. I'm like, you idiots. There's no way that could be a full movie. Come on.
Yeah.
If you're going to torrent something, at least get the whole thing.
Well, know what you're doing. Look for the feedback on the torrents.
Yeah, but
I think there will be a new torrent system coming soon.
Well, the existing one does a pretty good job.
It does a good job of transmitting the files. What it does a bad job of is keeping its users anonymous.
Indeed. 855-450-FREE. We're going to talk a little bit more about the loss of your freedom, either by government hands or by end-user agreements, because if you've got complaints about Facebook, how they're treating you, you probably signed up, you probably clicked OK on something that gave them that right to do it. Should that be more closely scrutinized. 8:55.
Would you like to hang out with Penn Jillette? He's keynoting Freedom Fest this year. I, for one, am thrilled. Freedom Fest is the largest liberty-oriented gathering in the world. They take a Big Ten approach with libertarians, conservatives, liberals, anarchists, capitalists, and just open-minded people mingling together to hear real debates, share real solutions, and converse freely. This year's theme is the Wild West, a time of liberty and opportunity, or a time of anarchy and violence. Maybe both. Go to freedomfest.com/FTL and get your tickets now. freedomfest.com/FTL. Not convinced yet? Hey, I understand. It's a high-end event. Even with coupon code FTL50. Sure, you're likely to receive investment advice that'll make that sum seem paltry, but I have something special for you. Go to freedomfest.com/FTL and you'll get the 5 best speeches from last year for free. Call it a test drive. Do yourself a favor and go to freedomfest.com/FTL. freedomfest.com/FTL. Use coupon code FTL50 for a discount.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. 8:55, 450 free. Thank you for joining us for hour number 2 of our 3-hour show. We do 3 hours every night, every day of the year, 365 days.
A 3-hour tour.
I know. But we enjoy it, and we love taking your calls because you guys come up with some really interesting topics, and we appreciate that. The we I refer to is myself, Chris.
Hey, I'm Ian.
And nobody formerly known as Rich Paul.
So would that make you Gilligan and him the skipper?
No, what? Is that a weight thing?
we look, that would probably be the way to go because, you've...
Oh, Ian is Gilligan. I mean, geez, you weigh like one of my forearms.
Oh, well, there is that. He might be a better Gilligan.
Right. I didn't go with Ginger because I don't find you that attractive.
Oh, thanks. Not that Aria's not here.
See, I like Marianne better.
Well, everybody likes
Marianne's the hottie.
I think everybody liked Marianne better. I think Marianne had that girl next door thing, somewhat attainable, while Ginger was just aloof and nobody's.
She was cast from pure unobtainium.
Absolutely. Well, we were talking about Barrett Brown. This conversation about whistleblowers and people being prosecuted for things that one would think are protected by our First Amendment to our Constitution, but the reality is the government doesn't really protect us from much of anything. And the Constitution doesn't protect us from anything.
They protect us from knowledge, wisdom, information, truth.
Let's keep that out of the hands of the people. But you have a little bit more. We were talking about Barrett Brown.
Yeah, this is the reporter who had his home raided by the FBI. His computers were seized because he put a link to some documents from the Stratfor company he had not hacked Stratfor. He was not involved with Anonymous and their taking of these documents. He just linked to them in a chat room, and that got him charged with various different things. In fact, prosecutors went so far as to threaten his mother with obstruction of justice for hiding his laptops in her kitchen cabinet. Brown posted a somewhat unhinged YouTube video threatening to launch his own personal investigation into the FBI agent in charge, Robert Smith, to, quote, ruin his
name.
To, quote, ruin his life and look into his effing kids. Brown blames the threats on a manic episode brought on by withdrawal from his antidepressant, as well as heroin, an addiction he's been fighting for years. This is from the Wired.com story out of 2016 about him getting out of prison and kind of his plan to continue going after. He's not going to back down from being a journalist. However, recent news, I did find a recent story about him, this from the end of April. He apparently recently burned his National Magazine Award. Why? Well, it was a protest against The Intercept. You know them?
Yeah, that was started by
Glenn Greenwald, the very person who... Now, I don't think Glenn was the money man behind the site, but he was the prime kind of editor or whatever. He was the big-name journalist that had his face on the site, basically.
Right. Was he still in charge when this happened?
Greenwald's still there, I'm pretty sure. He's one of the main journalists behind The Intercept. And, of course, Greenwald, for those that don't know, is the main journalist who helped Edward Snowden release documents way back when in 2013.
Sure. He and Laura Petras of the New York Times, I believe.
So there was apparently a very strange decision here from The Intercept. This is what Barrett Brown was protesting. The Intercept decided to close their Edward Snowden archive.
Huh.
Now, he did this protest, Barrett Brown, on a live stream from his home while the outlet's staffers celebrated their news publication's 5th birthday in New York. On Twitter, Brown lambasted the, quote, self-congratulatory party, then incinerated the journalism award that he won in 2016 for a series of columns written for The Intercept while he was in prison, called The Barrett Brown Review of Arts and Letters in Jail. The Intercept's parent company, First Look Media, made the controversial decision this March to shutter access to its Snowden archive and lay off the research team that had maintained it. The archive represented a portion of the trove of National Security Agency documents that had been provided by whistleblower Edward Snowden in 2013 to journalists Laura Poitras and Glenn Greenwald, who would go on to help found The Intercept with the expressed mission of, quote, aggressively reporting on them.
Right.
I would really love to ask Glenn Greenwald why he did that, because he's a person of reputation. He's got a reputation which leads me to believe that he's generally on the right side of things, and I would really like to hear from the horse's mouth why he closed that archive, and also whether there are full copies of that archive
somewhere
out
else.
there elsewhere.
Would presume someone copied it, but the Snowden link included millions of highly classified documents and turned out to yield explosive revelations about mass surveillance. Over the last 5 years, the disclosure continued to produce major news stories, with The Intercept one of the few publications still dedicated to reporting on and publishing the documents into this year. The decision to close the archive entirely was first announced in an internal email to employees from First Look CEO Michael Bloom. So it wasn't Greenwald who made the decision. He's just like their head reporter, basically. He's not the owner.
The other thing. One possible response from Greenwald would have been, that was a horrible thing, and I'm looking for a new job.
From their CEO, Michael Bloom, who cited budget reprioritization as the reason for the, quote, restructuring. Poitras, in particular, however, was angry. Before the decision was made public, she issued multiple internal emails to the CEO and company board of directors opposing it, but to no effect. On March 23rd, 2 weeks after the news went public, Brown published a detailed timeline of events and leaked internal correspondence given to him by someone involved, exposing the internal process that led to the axing of the archive.
Sounds like somebody got to the money men and the money men got to the organization.
Yeah. He then decided to burn his award on the night of The Intercept's 5-year anniversary party. The closure of the archives, in his view, is evidence of a deeper lack of understanding of the leak's intrinsic value to current conversations of the surveillance state and a part of a wider perceived inertia or failure within the media, which he contrasts with the risks taken by whistleblowers and activists often imprisoned for leaking revelatory materials. Quote, I'd already vowed to burn my National Magazine Award shortly after learning of the closure, he told the Daily Dot, but further said, quote, these people have the right to do whatever they like, but when they pretend to be competent to make that decision, it's necessary that their surreal failures to handle even the things I handed them with a bow on it be made very, very plain.
And I've got to say, okay, did somebody make the call and said, you know what, we're just not getting the Snowden stuff like we used to? Well, like Ian said, there are millions and millions of documents that Snowden turned over, and God knows what is not being found because this stuff isn't accessible.
Well, if you leave it open, you let the internet crowdsource it.
Exactly.
And also because of the media blackout that has surrounded all of this stuff. One of the most horrific things of the whole WikiLeaks thing is that the American media absolutely refuses to cover the content of the links.
Well, the
only story they've carried on it has been Pizzagate, but the version of Pizzagate that they carried wasn't even, it was a lie. It was mischaracterized. It wasn't what they said it was.
Right. Read into that what you will. Powers that
what
be.
I read into it is unless you were willing to lie and toe the government line, you don't get a license to broadcast.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's that.
Well, in this case, it's an internet site, so there is no license to put this information out there. The Intercept isn't a government licensed group.
No, the Intercept is not. They're apparently licensed by their money people, though, and so that was. There's always somebody to get to if people know who's supporting the organization.
I remember being so jazzed about the Intercept because I followed Glenn Greenwald.
Well, they've had some great reporting.
Yeah,
I mean, really in-depth, useful reporting.
I mean, I knew who Glenn Greenwald was well before the Snowden stuff.
Okay, yeah. He was with The Guardian.
Yeah, but he was one of those rare libertarian voices that you would occasionally see. I know you're going to shake your head at that. But occasionally you would see him taking on liberty issues.
He's good at questioning the status quo in the state. That's for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Barrett Brown's got a few more excoriating things to say about the state of the media today.
Well, I want to hear more about that. 855-450-FREE. We're talking Barrett Brown. We're talking Julian Assange. We're talking whistleblowers and people that want you to hear the truth. This is a good thing, and it's what you're entitled to when your own government you can't trust. This is Free Talk Live. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE. That's our toll-free number, 855-450-3733. Or you can hit us up on Discord. That's discord.lrn.fm. Just load that app, use your high-speed internet, and your quality microphone. You will sound great. We've been talking about censorship, and we've been talking about whistleblowers. And Barrett Brown, who was basically prosecuted for sharing a link to some Stratfor documents. This was a few years back, and we were talking about Julian Assange, who has some health issues, it sounds like, and questions about how he has been treated in the UK's prison system and what's going on with Julian.
Well, I suspect if Julian Assange were on a hunger strike, we would know about that because generally you'd want to publicize
it's something
that.
you announce,
right?
Yeah, and
he's being abused.
In contact with his attorney.
Yeah, he's. It sounds to me like he's being abused or starved, or as you suggested, perhaps even poisoned.
Yeah,
while he's in there,
poisoned or drugged. Because I mean, the thing is, if you're going to investigate, if you're going to be interrogating someone, and you don't want him to report the details of his interrogation to an attorney, one ways you can do that is Rohypnol or something that's going to slow the mind, confuse the memory. You know.
By the way, Bitcoin.com is your premier source for everything Bitcoin Cash related. Bitcoin.com can help you choose a Bitcoin Cash wallet. Buy Bitcoin Cash, show you where you can spend your Bitcoin Cash. You can read the latest news and engage with the community on their forums. Just go to Bitcoin.com and don't forget to check out their new local.bitcoin.com site that's going to launch coming up on Tuesday next week, which I'm pretty interested to give that a try. It'll allow people to buy and sell Bitcoin Cash without any of those pesky know your customer identification requirements. At least the site won't have those. Each individual seller will get to decide how to handle that individually, and the conversations are purportedly going to be encrypted between buyers and sellers. So you can go there and register for an account right now at local.bitcoin.com.
We're going to go to the phones where we've got Trey calling in from Arkansas. Trey, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hi. So I don't know about the Hillary Clinton commencement speech at Hunter College the other day, but basically instead of talking about the students, she made this whole speech about herself, and then out of nowhere,
Hillary.
she just...
It's politicians.
Yeah, she's classic Hillary. All right. And then towards the end, she, like out of nowhere, she takes the microphone off the stand and she starts frantically shoving it in her floppy cunt, squirting all over the...
LRN.FM.
Sir, appreciate that. Can't say that on the radio.
Yeah, that's one of those words. I don't even think that even made it into the 7. I think that's 8, 9, 10, or 11.
Carlin 7? Yeah, that wasn't
right.
one of Carlin's 7.
Unbelievable.
That's too
but
bad.
yeah, there was a lot of press.
Grow up.
Yeah, absolutely. About Hillary's speech, and it was pretty much a Hillary-loving and Trump-hating speech. That's what I heard.
Yeah.
But
Well, she's playing to her base, right?
of course, and
She's at college. Was it college? Was it?
Yeah.
Commencement speech? Yeah, I mean, mostly liberals, probably.
absolutely. I really read the headline and said, well, that's something I can skip today and continue on.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to you're not going to get any new information.
Desperately trying to stay relevant, I'm really curious because I do think she's going to run for president again.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think
you think she's going to be last in?
I think she will, and I think the idea is to be. I think they're setting up some sacrificial lambs right now. I think Joe Biden's going to be the first sacrificial lamb, hopefully.
I did read an article that was alleging that the Democrats are planning on culling the field. They hope to eliminate 50% of the field shortly.
Yeah, and that'll probably be, 5 or 6 leave the primary and a couple are found hanging from their doorknobs.
I think that would reduce it. Are there like 20 people running on the Democrat side? It's a huge field. Everybody wants a piece of Trump. And they feel he's an easy target, and, in some ways he could be. I'm not going to call this one.
See, I don't see him as an easy target at all. I think the difference between the Trump base and the Clinton base is that the Trump base is armed and the Clinton base is helpless. So if the election doesn't go the way the Trump base likes, then what happens there? They've got tactical advantage up the yin-yang. And
nobody's going to start shooting if a Democrat gets elected.
I
didn't
don't
happen
know.
with Barack Obama.
It didn't happen with Obama,
Hillary.
But it
didn't
civility
happen with
has been falling, and political violence has been rising. All of a sudden, we didn't have Antifa 8 years ago.
But the people on the left are less likely to take to the streets and be violent, right? Like
I would agree with that.
Not really. They're more likely to show up and brain you with a bike lock.
Wait, did I say the left? I'm sorry, I meant the right. The people on the right are less likely to show up. They're also similar to me. But the people on the right are more, they see themselves as more of the respectable, we're the good guys kind of class.
Right.
And
they do, but they also see the importance of the Second Amendment, and the question is, how many of those guys can you brain with bike locks before the rest of them say, well, I'll tell you what, since I'm a Second Amendment believer, next time you try and swing a bike lock at me, why don't I shoot you in the face, and that'll solve that problem.
I think
and it's a reasonable response because those bike locks can kill.
But the Tea Parties were nothing compared to the Occupy movement, right? They both sort of happened at around the same time. They both involved large groups of a certain political belief system coming together in public and having no real effect on anything. And the people on the left with Occupy seem to have more staying power. They seem to be, because they probably didn't have jobs.
They didn't have anywhere else to be.
That was a big part of it. Yeah, so you have, I don't know. I think there's going to have to be a lot more left-wing violence for there ever to get to a shooting, to big-time shooting. You're going to have these little flare-ups.
What's going to happen if, say, Bernie Sanders gets elected? A huge wave of left-wing violence by the government.
Left-wing violence?
Yes, by the government, because he's a socialist, and so he's going to have to up taxes. That's left-wing violence. He's going to regulate.
But it's not visible violence.
Business.
We know it's
not physical violence, but we know it's the violence when the police come to the door. If the police don't come to the door, you don't have enforcement on your regulation. If the police do come to the door, that's when you see the violence, and that's when you hope that the guy whose door they're coming to has an AR-15 and isn't going to go softly, at least in my case.
I see what you're saying, and it's a fantasy that I'm sure many libertarians have had.
I only fantasize about other people going out shooting.
What I'm saying.
I'd prefer to survive and see the end of the thing.
And that's right, and that's why it won't happen. For every killdozer, you've got most everybody else is going to just quietly go into custody. It's not going to happen.
Most of them will, but what happens once? The time that people do like suicide attacks is when they feel themselves to have nothing left to lose, So it's like if the police show up, I'm probably going to go quietly. If the police show up and put their hoods up to block their webcams, at that point it's time for me to fear for my life, because that's how they do when they want to shoot you off camera.
855-450 free.
We're not going to do that for tax dodgers.
Do we see an imminent shooting war here in the U.S.? I don't think so, but I'm not going to rule it out at some point in the future. 855-450 free. This is Free Talk Live.
Bitcoin.com wants you to know about SaveItPurse.com. Since launching in 2014, over 200,000 users have saved an average of 15% for a combined $4 million using Bitcoin, or BTC. And now you can use Bitcoin Cash, BCH, to fund your account. You can save between 5 to 33% on things you're going to buy anyway when you shop using SaveItPurse.com. Add items to your cart, fund your account, select your discount, and save. SaveItPurse.com. Save ATPurse.com.
This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. We're in hour number 2, and we've been talking a lot of things. Rich wanted to talk about shooting wars. That got us a little distracted, but hey, who doesn't like to talk about the possibility of a second American Revolution?
I mean, a second American Revolution is a possibility.
I think it's a definite. It's going to happen. The question is, how long will it be? It could be.
What'll it look like?
Right. It could be 5.
That's the big question. I mean, the thing is, if it's like a divorce to some extent, where, you know, what I would like to see is to see states start seceding, and, like, you know, imagine California's talked about secession for a long time. Mm-hmm. Now, there's nothing that California can do that I'm really going to support, because I hate California, except secede.
Yeah, get out.
Get out of it. Okay, and that means that there's that much of the economy is no longer there to be milked to oppress the rest of us. You know,
and as California goes, so goes the rest of the nation in a lot of cases, right? They started with cannabis decriminalization. They started with a lot of the taxes and other things like that. So let's have them start secession and have other states follow suit. Before we go on with this conversation, I want to, just got to get this in here about newer sponsor here on Free Talk Live. If you're trying to reach the crypto market specifically, or you want to spread mass awareness of your crypto technology, you need a communications company that specializes in that field. You know, your typical PR firm doesn't know what they're doing in that area. Leveraging 35-plus different brands, part of the Investor Brand Network, and more than 5,000 downstream distribution partners, Cryptocurrency Wire combines the power of specialization with mass market reach. With their help, you can start connecting with crypto-friendly journalists and more than 1.6 million followers. Their commitment is to get the most eyes possible on your big news while it's fresh. Whether domestic or international, they can reach 56 different countries and also provide translation services. If your company is an important, relevant newsmaker, you need someone that specializes in the field to get your message heard. CryptocurrencyWire.com. We've even used them here at Free Talk Live. It's CryptocurrencyWire.com. So I'm sorry, you were talking about the revolution there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the many pages that I run is called U.S. Exit, and what we encourage the states to do is, for those of them who are sick of being tied to the other ones, get a divorce. This has been a 200-year marriage, and I'm sure
it's abusive.
It's abusive. Y'all need out of it. I'm not even blaming one side or the other. Y'all just need to be separate. And when that happens, my big hope is that one state, the state of New Hampshire, out of the 50 states, will become the free state. Because one thing that I expect is a lot of liberals, when they see the conservatives taking over in conservative towns or in conservative states, are going to blow town. A lot of conservatives in liberal areas, when they see the liberals taking over, are going to blow town. That's a lot of people moving around, and that's a great time for a whole bunch of libertarians to come back us up in the Free State Project and the Live Free or Die Project.
Well, don't wait. Just come now rather than waiting for that.
Yeah.
Because what we want to do is create the most freedom-friendly place, so the freedom-hating conservatives and liberals leave here.
Exactly. The people who are going to come when it hits the fan are going to be the people who had too much to lose before, but now they've lost it.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting. There was I was just reading a headline the other day. This was from I think the Idaho State Statesman, which is like a big paper in Idaho, but they were just talking about a fundraiser that was held there for the 51st state called Liberty. This has been this sort of secessionist movement in eastern Oregon, eastern Washington, Idaho, parts of Montana. But they're pretty well organized, and they're always proposing this, at least in the Washington State House, Washington State House, if that makes sense.
Now, there is one possibility, I think, for a peaceful revolution that would restore peace in the United States and reduce acrimony, okay? And that's a return to the concept of federalism. Because remember, when the country was first founded, the states were not supposed to all have the same policies. Each state was supposed to have its own policies, but if you didn't like the state you were in, you could move to a state that you liked better. So if you're pro-choice and you're living in a pro-life state, leave.
Yeah.
Go to another state. If you're pro-life and you're living in a pro-choice state, leave. Go to another state. And choose your own tribe more specifically. But in order to make that happen, we have to take power away from the federal government and return it to the state governments. And I think the federal government has become too corrupt to give up that power. But they can prove me wrong by just respecting the 9th and 10th Amendments.
Well, I would agree with that assessment. That the problem is that stuff was sliding not long after the Constitution was passed. But it took the biggest hits in the turn of the century, turn of the 20th century.
The first traitor to the Constitution was George Washington when he put down the Whiskey Rebellion. So remember the Whiskey Rebellion, the Northeast will rise again.
Right. It's insanity, but when you had the progressives who were able to get a lot of things passed, and the fact that we have an income tax in this country was voted on and approved by a majority of state legislatures. The people were behind this idea. They were behind the idea that we can give up selecting our own legislators for the U.S. Senate. We can just have that go to a popular vote. That was
that was in 1913, a year that will live in infamy as marking the creation of the Federal Reserve, the creation of the income tax,
and
creation of... Was it an expansion of the war on drugs or the beginnings?
That stuff, it was all in that era.
What was the other thing at 1913?
Well, no, it was the 17th Amendment, which did away. It created popular vote for the Senate.
Yes, that was the other one. Popular vote for the Senate in the 17th Amendment. Thank you.
Yeah, and if people aren't familiar with how things were prior to 1913, state legislatures selected your senator. So what you had was somebody who was responsible to the state. The state was part of this compact of states. That was one of the core tenets of federalism, that the states themselves had a seat at the table. The people did through Congress, through the House of Representatives, and the only, and that's why the idea was it matters not who's president, because that's not really an important job. More work is going to get done in the Senate and the House.
Exactly. The federal government was just supposed to be a military alliance between the states, coupled with an agreement that the states would consider could continue to have open and free trade between each other.
Yeah.
And what has happened is the opposite. Instead of open and free trade, we've got overregulated, cartelized trade.
You do, and you have a lot of things that people complain about now or argue about are the results of federal government seizing these powers. Why is abortion an issue? Why is abortion a federal issue? It shouldn't be. This should be
because people want to tell everybody what to do.
Exactly. And who were the people that wanted to? The progressives in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And now we all think that we just have to turn to Washington to make sure they do what we want them to do.
And that should be what the conservatives are going for. If they believe that abortion is murder, and if they believe in the 10th Amendment, then they need to remember that murder is a state issue, not a federal issue.
Well,
at the same time, the Supreme Court waded into that with Roe versus Wade, which as a pro-choice person I think was wrongly decided because it violates the 10th Amendment. Nothing tells the federal government, that it has a right to mess with basically the murder statutes of various states. So each state should be able to define murder as it wants to, because all murder means is an unlawful killing. So abortion is murder if and only if it's illegal.
Absolutely. 855-450-FREE. What do you think? Should we return to federalism? Is there a chance in hell we could if we wanted to? We'll talk about that. 855-450-FREE. This is Free Talk Live. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. In studio, it's Chris.
I'm Ian.
And the nobody formerly known as Rich Paul.
And, well, we've been all over the board, but, Ian, your teeth look white.
Well,
that's racist.
Just gotta say.
You must be referring to My Magic Mud, which is a longtime sponsor here on Free Talk Live. They're back, actually. They took a few years off, and now they're back after originally being on with us way back in the beginning. They've had a lot of growth in that period of time. We actually interviewed Jessica Armand, who's one of the founders, on a Sunday night show earlier this week. And if you want to have a whiter, cleaner smile and fresh breath, then check out My Magic Mud. It's a black tooth powder made of charcoalized coconut shells and bentonite clay. Sounds crazy, right? Well, we on Free Talk Live have been using My Magic Mud since they were just getting started and can testify it's a great product. So indispensable that we haven't been without it since the first time that we tried it. You can use it every day for 4 days, then 3 or 4 days, or every 3 or 4 days afterward, and you'll see effects. Clinically proven to whiten teeth and cleans better than regular toothpaste. You can get My Magic Mud at most local health food stores, Sprouts Natural Grocers, CVS, and Walmart's Natural Beauty aisle. But you can get 20% off, and you don't have to leave your house or office with code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. Plus, if you order, I forget what the minimum amount is, but it's pretty low. If you order a certain amount of product, you get free shipping there as well. So save 20% with code FTL20. That's FTL like Free Talk Live, 20, FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. Great products. I got the toothpaste up in the bathroom right now.
I got some from Mark, and I still have to try the toothpaste. They didn't always have the toothpaste,
no,
right?
They started with just the Magic Mud original product, but they've expanded their line since then.
And what was the original product for? Was it for teeth as well?
Yeah.
Or? Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But
So
arguably that's the more powerful version.
Interesting.
But we're absolutely.
It's also the messier version as well.
Yeah, and that's what I remember.
Yeah.
So I tried My Magic Mud maybe 3 years ago, something like that. Ran into the fine folks up at Rogers Campground during one of the great Liberty events up there. And I picked some up, and I used it for a few days. My son was up here visiting, and then my son left, and suddenly I couldn't find My Magic Mud. I suspect, but we both bought some. That's why I think he may have taken it by accident.
Well, there have been times when I and somebody else have bought the same thing, and one of us has ended up with both of them because it was like, oh, there's my that. I should throw that in the bag. Well, yours is already in the bag.
I suspect that's what happened. So I'm not accusing my son of larceny this time. God knows I have in the past. Where's that pack of cigarettes? Anyway.
So do you want to hear more from Barrett Brown?
I find that kind of interesting, and we're he's going to
he's continuing to excoriate the mainstream media. He doesn't have any water to tote at this point. He spent the last few years in prison. He got out in 2016 after 4 years behind federal penitentiary bars for posting a link in a chat room, which was sort of one of the beginnings of the federal crackdown on freedom of speech on the internet, and it's pretty scary.
And the interesting thing is it's a precursor to the Trump war on the media, so that didn't start with Trump, it's just continuing with Trump.
Exactly right. So in other posts that he made, this is from the Daily Dot, dailydot.com.
Hold on. Can I point out that the war on the media really started, at least as far back as I can remember, with Adams?
John Adams?
John Adams and the Alien and Seditions Act. I mean, if you,
the Alien and Sedition Act.
Lincoln put people in prison too during the Civil War.
Absolutely. So really, we're just continuing a long-held American tradition of stifling the press.
Right.
Yeah, this is just another battle in the war on the press, really, between the U.S. government and the press.
Yeah.
Yep. Now it's expanding out to the internet, and it's pretty awful.
And it's a big question what kind of internet we're going to end up with, because the internet was started as a place where you weren't really bound by national laws that much. Now it's changing. Now you're bound by the laws of every nation at the same time.
Look at the terrible GDPR or whatever they called it in Europe, where a year ago or whatever they crammed all these notices down our throat. Every single website you ever went to sent you an email letting you know about their new GDPR policy that is going to affect you. Even though you don't live in Europe, it's still going to affect you. You're going to have to click accept on the cookies notice on every single damn website, no matter how many times you go to the damn site.
Everywhere
that makes me sick every time I do it. I just want to toss my cookies.
It is insane.
It's frustrating.
But to answer your question, I don't think we haven't seen what the internet is going to be. I don't think it's going to.
There's going to be the free internet, and there's going to be the not free internet.
I agree with you completely.
And the free internet will be the hidden internet, because that's the only way to keep it free.
Yeah.
Well, I heard that EOS, which is a cryptocurrency, now has a decentralized way of doing domain name resolution.
Really? Really? So that
which isn't a new concept.
EOS, not to get too deep in the letter in the alphabet soup, but that's the thing that's supposed to be the for the Internet of Things?
No, you're thinking of IOTA.
Yeah, I am thinking of IOTA. Okay, thanks.
EOS is another cryptocurrency with like a programming language aspect, kind of like Ethereum, from what I understand.
Yes.
I've kind of been into it somewhat for the last several months, just kind of experimenting with it, and they have a bunch of sites. A lot of them are gambling sites, for instance.
Oh, really?
Each site has its own tokens on the EOS blockchain.
That would be a great thing for the church to set up.
Sure.
A gambling site? That would be
the thing that I've observed with these sites, and this is, from a light amount of kind of investigation and checking into these things, but the tokens that I purchased on EOS, because what you can do with EOS is you can go to a decentralized exchange that you automatically have all your stuff on. You don't have to load things into the exchange because it's all based in the EOS blockchain.
It's looking at your wallet, not at a separate.
You're authorizing it to look in your wallet.
Non-custodial.
And so you can exchange the EOS for tokens for EOS, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure there's some winners out there, but a lot of these sites are so fly-by-night, or they just don't last forever.
Yes.
Their tokens may look good initially, but then they fall off the radar. So, I lost my ass on some of these tokens big time. Now, the price of EOS has gone up, so it's actually made up for it, but I've got like half the amount of EOS that I started with.
But what we're seeing is these are the first movers. These are the experimental stuff that's coming out, and EOS itself is only, maybe not even a year old on mainnet.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's really new. But what you're seeing is EOS has really spurred the idea of dApps, or digital apps. Decentralized app. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, if it becomes valueless because the people aren't running the service well, you can always deal with that by going in and starting your own service.
Sure.
So you can start a better casino. They can't stop you.
Right, and that's the beauty of EOS and Ethereum to some degree, is the idea that you can build your own decentralized platform and ride on top of somebody else's. And through encryption and things like that, this is where we get to the point of a second internet that can't be stopped on top of EOS or on top of Ethereum. And I think those are – I have my doubts whether Ethereum could scale to it.
There was another coin way back, still out there, called Namecoin.
Yeah.
And the whole purpose of that was to have a decentralized domain name resolution.
So definitely not a new idea, but I think we have better tools now that may enable these
Well, it's never
things
really caught on in any way, shape, or form. Because the fact is, the average person isn't looking for this.
Can I get Facebook on it?
But why does it matter? The reason that it matters is because every time you see one of those takedown notices on a website, they're probably not physically controlling that server. server. What they've done is they've gone into the DNS system they've redirected the domain server to a new IP address. So if they can't do that, they can't seize your domain. Nobody can sue you for it unless they make Namecoin believe they've got a real argument, or whoever, or in this case EOS. But it has to be, they have to convince a distributed service, not a centralized government authorized monopoly.
What we have to do is convince people that you should look for decentralized solutions that don't have a headquarters that can be raided and all their servers can be shut down because somebody, it doesn't matter whether it's you or if it's the left or the right or anyone else, things need to be designed so that no one can take them down except for you.
Well, the first place to start, I think, is the same way they built the internet, which is set up dark web porn sites where nobody can disturb your privacy and know what kind of porn you're looking at. That will bring people to the dark web.
Nobody knows what kind of porn you're looking at.
Nobody knows the trouble I've seen.
We're going to talk about that, and we may
Barrett Brown too.
Yeah, a little bit about Barrett Brown, and we may talk about a vegan cafe that's going out of business in Australia. More for you. This is Free Talk Live.
Business owners, you want more customers? Accept cryptocurrencies. There's people all around you just waiting to spend money at your store. If only you would take it. I know, you've been waiting till someone else makes it easy. Well, good news. HelpMeTakeBitcoin.com adds Bitcoin to your point of sale, totally free. Use the same equipment you already have, now with Bitcoin. And unlike credit cards, there's no fees. Let the guys at HelpMeTakeBitcoin.com bring new customers to your store. HelpMeTakeBitcoin.com.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live, 855, 453. Thank you for joining us for hour number 3 of our show. We do 3 hours every day, 365 days a year. But, I mean, once in a while.
3 hour tour.
Oh, we already used that one. Rich, come
good
on.
God. I'm sorry. I didn't mark that used.
Hey, there's always new people tuning in.
That's a good point. And not all stations carry all 3 hours. If your station doesn't carry all 3 hours of Free Talk Live, give them a call. Let them know they should, because you appreciate what we do.
But then again, the podcast listeners listen usually to the whole show, so they'll hear it more than once, which they might roll their eyes at.
True.
And that's a good point. You can download every episode of Free Talk Live that has ever been on.
Just about.
Nearly. Yeah. Going back to, go ahead, Ian, 2000.
On the website, there's archives that go back to 2006, but there's a couple torrents that have archives from before that. So
Wow.
So that's a lot of content, and you can find
more
those.
than you can listen to.
Yeah, you can find those at archives.freetalklive.com. Pretty cool stuff. Go back and pick your dates in history you were interested in, and see what we were talking about regarding whatever was happening. In studio, it's myself, Chris.
I'm Ian.
And nobody formerly known as Rich Paul.
And we've been talking about Barrett Brown.
He's mad.
He's an angry individual, and I can't blame him.
He's protested recently by burning his National Magazine Award at home. For those just tuning in that don't know the name Barrett Brown, he's the guy who went to prison for 4 years during the Obama administration. But, of course, it could have happened under Trump or Bush. As you pointed out, all these presidents are just carrying out and continuing to ratchet up the crackdown on internet freedoms and freedom of speech. He went to prison for posting a link to some hacked documents from the Stratfor.
And I got to confess here, in case there are any federal agents listening, I copy and pasted that link too on my Facebook page.
Well, it was nice knowing you.
I'm pretty sure I copied.
I'm sure.
I guarantee you they're listening.
But I also
am Spartacus.
Right. But I'm pretty sure I copy and pasted it from somebody else who copy and pasted it. So I evidently may become a victim of the war on copy and paste.
Quick, somebody panic.
So he recently, on a live stream from his home, burned his National Magazine Award in protest of The Intercept, which is a website that was founded along with Glenn Greenwald, who, of course, everybody knows, or people should know from the Snowden releases years ago, for taking down their Snowden archive. And but that wasn't all. In other Medium posts and also in a Facebook post accompanying the certificate burning live stream on Tuesday, this was at the end of April, Brown sought to demonstrate the dysfunctionality of the press by listing specific grievances with the conduct of former Intercept reporters and editors in handling or passing on relevant stories. He said, quote, "The institutional press as a whole has proven that it cannot deal with information age threats that some of us have given them every opportunity to address," he said. Further, he said, "So long as incompetence, amoral conduct, inertia, and all of these other factors are considered acceptable, the press will continue to fail, and the powerful will continue to develop capabilities involving information that we're already behind in understanding, even those of us who have spent a decade on the subject."
And things that get corrupt tend to stay that way. So the only way that we can express our displeasure from it is moving on
to replace
from the corrupt.
Do something new.
Exactly. Do something new. Create your own journalism. Find out the truth about something and publish it.
Some of the issues Brown outlined include the refusal of reporters to take seriously revelations about the private surveillance contractors uncovered a number of years ago by independent media outlets and groups like Project PM, which is Brown's own crowdsourced investigative collective. One specific incident cited by Brown to the Daily Dot, that's who's doing this reporting, involved his frustrated attempts to have Intercept editorial staff bring attention to a sophisticated data mining apparatus called Romus Coin in 2011. Uncovered by volunteer researchers digging through the enormous file dump stolen from intelligence contractor H.B. Gary and published by anonymous hacktivists. Quote,
is that Romacoin, Romacoin?
I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. It's Romus/coin.
Oh, okay.
Coin is all capitalized, so I suspect that's an acronym for something. He said, among the specific people I'd warned repeatedly and at length was Greenwald, who'd been targeted by the same firms and initially been interested in the information my volunteers and I compiled for him, but gradually lost interest. He said further, later, the 2016 election was undermined to some substantial degree via a data mining and targeted propaganda operation by Cambridge Analytica in conjunction with Palantir and Archimedes, he continued, saying, which itself was one of the firms I'd exposed in my reporting on Romus Coin. The Intercept, however, according to Daily Dot, is not the only publication in the firing line. Of late, Brown has contacted several other outlets, including The New Yorker, over costly erroneous stories and questioning the work or motive of certain reporters who have since moved on to other organizations.
I like the fact that he's still applying the heat to what is the New York Times' famous byline? Is it,
all the news that fits we print.
That's pretty much it. But this idea that these guys are the paragons of liberty because they keep everyone honest, and they'll only do, they'll do the investigation, the investigative journalism. They'll be the fifth pillar of American freedom, and they don't do it. They don't. They'll do it as long as it sells some papers and as long as it doesn't anger anybody upstairs.
Well, and that's the thing is they're not concerned with truth anymore. They're concerned with the official line. The new tagline for the New York Times should be all the news that fits the narrative, because if the news doesn't fit the narrative, it's not going to go in the New York Times.
Well, it depends on how many clicks it generates too. So again, you have companies that are behaving like companies. They're trying to do their best for the bottom line, and that means getting people to read it. And for print journalism, the only place they're going to get it now is online.
Before I was an activist, said Brown, I was primarily a press critic. He regards journalistic failures as dangerous and is promising an alternative framework, quote, centered on curating crowdsourced research, unquote, supported by a process Congress. He writes, quote, naturally, if I can also discredit allegedly high-end journalists and editors largely by myself, it helps to give an indication of what we can do later this year, unquote. A formal announcement's coming soon, he says. But until then, he hopes to single-handedly force oversight and accountability against those within the media. He said further in his closing notes, If burning this award helps to focus the necessary attention on how much worse the problem is and how much easier the solution can be than many think, then it's obviously worth burning, particularly since I have 3 other National Journalism Awards, and all are equally worthless.
Oh, man.
Man, he's jaded. For good reason, though.
Well, yeah, for good reason, and I wouldn't say he's completely jaded because it sounds like he's come up with a solution. And the easiest solution to this problem is have a blockchain that's completely uncensored. Anybody can publish to it. Now, most of the stuff there will probably be false, but once somebody said it, people can pore over that blockchain, and it can't be deleted, and they can try to confirm it. Okay, and it sounds like that's the kind of thing that he's talking about. I hope I've properly reversed engineered his product from, a 3-sentence description of it, but that's how I would implement the solution he described.
The idea that Rich refers to is the idea that blockchains, because they're widely decentralized and distributed, that they can provide an immutable record, that once something is there, it would never go away. And for a lot of applications, like keeping politicians and the press honest, keeping a record forever of what they said is a big deal. And, we were reaping the rewards of the Snowden stuff, almost 5-6 years after it happened.
Well, that would be a good thing to start with, is to put the root block of this thing, let it be the Snowden archive, and the second block can have the other archive, the Assange.
Right, but after they've basically locked down the Snowden stuff through the Intercept, we don't know what is available. 855-450-FREE. What do you think? Should Barrett Brown be treated as a hero and not be forced to burn his document just to prove a point? This is Free Talk Live. This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE. That's our toll-free number. That's 855-450-3733. In studio, you have Chris, Ian, and Rich. For the artist formerly known as Nobody. The
formerly
artist,
known as Rich.
The Nobody, formerly known as Rich Paul.
Right. So if you used to know him as Rich Paul, you can still call him that. He'll still answer by that, but he prefers if you call him Nobody.
Don't call me late for supper.
Yeah, there you go. But we've been discussing freedom of the press and various ways that our government has squashed that. We don't really have that right anymore. And through, as Rich Paul referred to earlier, corporatism, which is really more, it's closer to how our oligarchy works than capitalism. Capitalism gets blamed all the time for everything that goes wrong, but this has never really been about capitalism in our recent memory.
Yeah, and the history of the world capitalism is actually interesting. In 1776, the same year as our Declaration of Independence was published, Adam Smith wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations, and he was arguing for freer markets and for a departure from the system that they had, which was called mercantilism, in which trade was controlled by the king, and the idea was to get as much gold into the country, and the king that can get the most gold into his country wins. Okay? So it was government-managed trade. He argued for free markets or capitalism, and for a while we had more or less free markets, but now we've returned to mercantilism under a new name, corporatism. But they claim that it's capitalism, but that's not how any of this works.
Yeah, for most people listening, you probably never lived in a country that practiced capitalism. You like to talk about it, but it's the reality that this thing has been out of control for a lot of years.
If you're not free, the system isn't capitalism.
That's it. We're going to go to Discord, where we've got Turd Ferguson on the line. Turd, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Yeah, how's it going, guys? Is my audio okay right now?
Sound fine.
Sound good.
Great. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, so I'm pretty bummed out with LRN.FM today. I really like our LRN.FM, but I'm having a little bit of a bummed out day today.
What's wrong, dude?
Well, specifically, I found out that it seems like @PacketSniffer doesn't like my taste in women, and as a matter of fact,
what's that have to do with the Liberty Radio Network?
Okay,
Exactly.
did we pay him? Did we hire him to evaluate people's dating choices? Because I don't remember seeing Packet Sniffer.
He's talking about another
roster.
chatter in the Discord chat.
Correct.
It is. It bums me out because I want to go to LRN.FM to be a good person, to hang out and just be a chill guy. But apparently I have to feel guilty about being a straight guy in the LRN.FM Discord.
If you feel guilty, that's your own problem.
Why do you feel guilty about being a straight guy, bro? It's okay to be straight. This is the current year.
I agree it's okay to be straight.
Well, what's the problem? I mean, whether I don't know if Packet Sniffer's straight or gay or whatever it is he is, I have no idea. But people are generally not going to have the same taste in women. Like, between the three of us in the studio, we probably all have different tastes.
I don't know, because packet sounds a lot like package, and usually if you're straight, you're sniffing the pocket. But that's just what I can derive from the name.
I agree. Can I please speak now for just
Explain the situation to us.
Sure. So the deal is I agree. We all shouldn't have the same tastes as women. I mean, of course, that would be ridiculous. But the problem is I can't even go into the LRN Discord anymore and have a different taste of women than Packet Sniffer without being called gay or without being.
Isn't there a block feature on Discord?
There is, yeah.
Why don't you hit that button? Then you won't have the problem.
I think he wants the conflict.
Well, then why are you complaining about the conflict?
Secretly, I want the conflict a little bit.
It's not a secret anymore. We just put it out over the air.
and you can't complain about it.
You can, but we'll go ha ha ha.
Right.
I think he's threatening you with a good time. Why don't you go fight with Packet Sniffer? You guys can get a room or whatever you need to do. Work it out.
There's no issue. I'd be totally down to deal with that. Otherwise, unfortunately,
with getting a room with him.
No, just totally down to be
okay. Because I was thinking if you're going to get a room with him, you might actually be gay, and you just have to come to terms with it.
No, see, the problem is. See, here's the issue. I would have no problem with being gay at all. The issue is apparently being any sexuality in the LRN Discord has become an issue because apparently if you're a 30-year-old and you think a 19-year-old with big boobs and tattoos is sexy, then apparently that's some kind of big issue now these days in 2019.
Well, luckily I've grown out of that because I'm 51 and I like 19-year-olds with big boobs. So hopefully I've aged out of that criticism.
I'm going to give you a little advice. Don't hug them by their shoulders from behind. And
this is the Biden tip. This is the Biden tip.
Don't
go
sniff
all Biden.
their hair from behind, definitely, or grab them by the face while you're making speeches. That's creepy.
Right.
Well, I certainly wouldn't do any of that. The issue is with even if I did do that in a private area where they had no issue, Packet Sniffer would certainly be able to call me out without issue to the public.
Well, that's because he's sucking up all the data on the network. That's what a Packet Sniffer does.
Thank you for finally getting my point, Rich Paul. I think this guy
I'm not sure what the point is here.
I'm not sure either.
I'm not sure why anyone cares.
Turd Ferguson, always appreciate your calls. I don't know. If things happen in chat rooms, then work it out in chat rooms.
Really.
And if all else fails, Mama always told me, if you don't have anything nice to say something surreal.
Is that what she said?
No, it's a lie.
But it was a good one.
True.
855-450 free, or you can hit us up on Discord at discord.lrn.fm. You'll sound just as good as Turd Ferguson. The audio quality on those always amazes
Yeah, he
me.
sounded great. I don't know if the content was any better than Sarah, but, you know.
No offense. Yeah, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there, too. That was almost a Sarah call.
That was
not the.
I mean, it's personal interests between you and other people. Conflicts between you and other people are probably interesting to you and to those other people, but not to anybody else most of the time.
With that said, we do appreciate people that connect with the show, however they happen to connect, and Discord happens to be one of those. It's not just audio; it's also text chat, and we have a bunch of rooms on a bunch of different topics, and a lot of people hang out in the on the air now, and they sometimes they develop their own little beefs with each other and things like that.
Where's the beef? Now, the Church of the Invisible Hand does offer mediation services. So, we do all of our mediations under the seal of the confessional. So our clergy will not testify about matters that you've mediated about. And so if you need mediation services, you can get in touch with me at facebook.com/church.invisible.hand.
No. I thought you were getting away from Facebook.
I am getting.
Aren't you Pope Indigent on the Discord server?
Yeah, you can get me on Discord.
That's where the problems are happening.
Go to Discord.
That's where
Facebook into
That's where the conflict is, and you've got an account there, so all they got to do is private message you.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Go to Pope Indigent on Discord. I'll straighten you out or spank you or whatever it is you need.
Maybe we'll find out more about Rich's unique mediation skills and offerings. Anyway, yikes. 855-450-FREE. I want to hear from you. It doesn't have to be about anything we've talked about, but anything you want to talk about. 855-450-FREE. This is Free Talk Live.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20, mymagicmud.com.
This is Free Talk Live, 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. That's our toll-free number. And we've been talking about freedom of the press, but we're going to change it up a little bit. And I hate this kind of news. I hate to hear that a business is closed. It's always sad, usually. In this case, I'm kind of happy, but I'm not surprised. You ever hear of an Australian vegan cafe called Handsome Her? Ian, do you ever hear about this one?
I haven't heard of it by name, but I think I know who they are.
There you go. Well, they favored
Handsome
women.
Her.
Handsome. This was the sign out front, said Handsome Her is a space for women by women.
So it's like a feminist coffee shop.
More or less.
They should have called it the Cancer Cafe.
Vegan. House rules. Rule number 1. Women have priority seating. Rule number 2.
Well, so long as I've got a face, you'll always have a place to sit.
Rule number 2. Men will be charged an 18% premium to reflect the gender pay gap,
which is false,
which is donated to a women's service. Rule number 3.
Now, does that mean that they're also going to pay men more? That they're going to have men working fewer hours to make up? Because there's also the gender hour gap. Women make less money per year on average. Men work more hours per year on average. Isn't it funny that people who work more make more money than people who work less? What a coincidence. What could possibly cause that?
Their rule number 3 is respect goes both ways. So their idea of respect,
but apparently not so much.
So you go in, you order your vegan lasagna or whatever it happens to be, and you get an increase of 18% on yours because you're male. But it's not all about the sex. So they say.
Now, what if you're transgender? Do they hate transgender boys or transgender girls?
Good question.
Well, in this case, they're going to have plenty of time to consider that because a vegan cafe in Australia that levied a tax on male customers is to close after becoming, quote, the punching bag of the internet, unquote.
That's not the reason they're closing.
Handsome
Her was accused of reverse sexism after opening in Melbourne in 2017.
That's not reverse sexism, it's just sexism.
Exactly.
It would be reverse sexism if you hated your own gender, and I do know some misandrous men and some misogynistic women.
That's the whole thing. They made it upon themselves. They put this policy out there that said we're going to charge men more. They made the announcement in a description of a Facebook event created to advertise their last day of business. The reaction to the man tax, quote, showed us how fragile masculinity is and solidified the necessity for us to confront and dismantle patriarchy.
Oh, sweetheart, you're so dumb and cute. Let me explain it to you. No, what you prove to yourself is that the laws of economics are solid, not that masculinity is fragile.
Yeah, and you can slice it any way you want, but if you want to play in the marketplace, you're going to take the hits with the wins.
I'm glad we had the opportunity to mansplain that to them.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sure that'll be brought up. Quote, we were just one little tiny shop on Sydney Road that was trying to carve out a swath of space to prioritize women and women's issues.
And to try to carve an extra 18% out of men.
Exactly. And suddenly we became the punching bag of Melbourne and the internet, unquote, they added. In another post on Facebook, the owners insisted they were not closing because of, quote, vitriol from men's rights activists, unquote, or because
they're not making any money because they're awful.
No, they said we are not closing because we are not making enough money, unquote.
They're claiming they're not closing because they're not.
So
making
they're claiming they're profitable but closing.
Did you say this was a restaurant or a coffee shop?
It was a restaurant, a vegan restaurant. Yes, their assertion is that they were not losing money.
Sure,
and that they
Just
didn't.
Like every other restaurant that closes,
they didn't really get tired of being beaten up in the international press because they were. The story goes back, like I said, for a couple of years.
They got too. Because, that's all they're doing there is misandering.
Well, I mean, look, a bunch of free press.
On men.
Well, right. But if that was actually something that the market could bear, if that was something that there was a demand for, if there were all these women out there that wanted to go to a man-hating restaurant,
vegan restaurant,
then all of the news media would have gotten them whatever attention they needed for that to happen. And it didn't happen for them.
The problem was that there were a lot of feminist women who wanted to go to a man-hating coffee shop. They just couldn't find men to pay for it. So that was the problem.
Exactly.
Who's going to pay to take that? They'd have to pay their own way.
We're going to go to Discord where we've got Stefan on the line. Stefan, can you hear me?
Yeah, just fine.
Excellent. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, leave it to the vegans to do that. Second of all,
God.
Thank you. I love that unnecessary
really
century beep. That rocked.
He auto bleeps himself. I appreciate that.
I love that.
So I can still say the word without it being aired. But
yeah, do that more.
No,
don't mess it up.
Yeah. Hey, Rich. You. Anyway.
Thank you.
I'm being a smarty. No, I was going to discuss the idea. Do you guys think that
already a better call than Turd Ferguson, by the way. Go ahead.
Do you guys think that a voluntary government can exist? Because at the moment, I'm running for mayor of my city.
Really?
Me too.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Rich,
the thing is, it's an interesting race because there's only two people. The
You
Democrats
and the other guy?
didn't even challenge him. Yeah.
Cool.
Wow.
And he's quickly digging his own grave.
Now, hold on.
So
Is it a partisan race or is it not?
It is.
It's partisan.
It is,
okay.
but I ran as an independent because the Libertarian Party of Ohio is a joke.
Oh, yeah. Didn't they run you out?
They ran me out of town on a rail, dude.
For governor.
All because I talk trash on the all-powerful Gary Johnson. But
oh, dear.
I disagree with you, but you shouldn't have been run out for it.
My chief policy position when I'm running for mayor right now is the idea of opening a flea market that you charge people money to sell things at. So that way you'd be collecting funds voluntarily. And I've calculated that the amount of money that would be raised would be more than the city tax costs.
Hold on. Wait, you're running why are you you're going to run a flea market or
does the town
The city
already
is going to run a flea market.
Okay, does the city already have a farmer's market or something like that?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Never
so
have.
You're kind of starting from ground up. Okay.
Yeah,
because
the idea would be you pay to sell things there. You pay the city to set up a booth, so that way people are opting in to the fundraising for the city. They're not being stolen from, and the idea is to raise enough money that you can abolish the city tax.
So basically, you're talking about a similar thing to the Silk Road auction that we're doing this year at Forkfest and Porkfest, where people are contributing items, and then the money raised by selling those items goes to the it goes to the cause. So you're just saying, in this case, a percentage of the proceeds would go to the cause, and the other percentage of the proceeds would go back to the seller?
Yeah.
Or the donor? Okay.
So basically, it would work like any other flea market. You pay to set up a booth. You keep the money from selling items, but the fee you pay to sell there goes to the city. So that way the city can still pay for things like parks and recreation and
this is going to be a pretty big flea market, isn't it? I mean, this is going to have to be massive.
It's a very small town. There's only 13,000 people here. And
well, just to
now,
put
do
this
you
in
have some areas where you'd also like to cut spending? Because the more you can cut spending, the less you have to build your flea market.
Absolutely. The city has 3 elementary schools. I want to shut down at least 2 of them.
Nice.
But you must hate children.
Right.
Huh?
You must hate children.
Oh, no, I love kids. That's why I'm telling them to go home and educate themselves instead of being brainwashed by state propaganda.
Okay, I got to hop in here because I just had to check into this, but there is some history behind this. Farmers markets have deep roots in our history. The first decades of this century, most cities with at least 30,000 people sponsored municipal markets.
Let's bring him back.
So, yeah, we're going to bring you back in just a moment. Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
855-450 free. What do you think? Could a town survive just voluntarily? Sounds good to me. 855-450 free. This is Free Talk Live. Talk Live, 855-450 free. It's our final segment tonight, but who knows? If you call us right away, maybe you'll get on the air. Again, that's 855-450 free. And we were talking about a vegan restaurant that put an 18%, basically a tax, a surcharge on any men who ate there. Unbelievably, Ian, they went out of business. That did not turn out to be a good move. Oh, I'm all broken up about it. I really wanted to go to Australia so I could go eat a meal that I would hate and pay 18% extra for because I am
and you can feel like you're hated while you're sitting there eating it, too.
Can you imagine
they all are...
the vicious looks you would get? What's he doing?
Son of a bitch.
He paid the tax, and now he's why is he smiling? Why is he laughing at me? I don't know. Again, 855-450 free. We were talking to Stefan in Ohio.
I'd like to be fair, though. I've had some decent vegan food, some surprisingly good. There's a buffet here in town that's vegan, vegetarian, or whatever. And
right.
Some of it's actually pretty good.
I've had one good vegan meal in my life, and that was at Zorba the Buddha Rajneesh Vegetarian Cuisine. If anybody saw the documentary Wild Wild Country, it was it used to be the Antelope Bar and Grill, but when the Rajneeshis took it over, they converted it into a vegetarian restaurant. And the vegetarian lasagna, hate to admit, was unbelievable.
I don't believe you.
Believe it. Believe it. We're going back to Stefan, who is Stefan's running for office, which is kind of cool, and he's running as an independent. We don't know if he's running against a Republican or a Democrat. It's a partisan
Republican.
Yeah. And
is it the incumbent, or are you guys both going to an open seat?
It's an incumbent. He's in here. He's been in here for a long time. I think 8 years now. And I believe the only reason he's running again is because the Republicans could not find anybody else that wanted to run.
Now, I'll tell you one thing that I've thought of doing. You were talking about shutting down schools. One of the things that I thought is if I was going to shut down schools, I could actually bribe the teachers union into tolerating that idea by saying, what we'll do is we'll let the teachers union take over those schools.
That's a great idea.
We'll cede the buildings to them. They can have them free and clear, and they can run them as schools, but they have to convince the parents to pay them voluntarily for their service like everybody else. Anybody else can start a school too, and if you do a better job than the teachers union does, which, chances are a blind mole could do a better job than the teachers union does, then you're going to get the business.
if they screw it up, they can just sell it to somebody who wants to buy it.
Right.
Exactly. Or maybe just take in new management.
Right.
But then, sure, let them elect their principal.
I think that's one of the
care.
best ideas, Rich. And it gives people something who otherwise, when you're like, we're going to shut down the schools, it
we're going to take
bad.
away your job, is how that sounds when Arvin Vora says
right. It sounds
or
bad.
you hate children, you hate educated children.
Exactly.
Whereas what you're talking about gives the teachers, and I think that not only should it be the teachers union, but I would say a share of that school and the buildings and all the things that are associated with it should go to all the school employees. So not just the teachers, but the janitors and the IT staff and whoever else.
That's a great way to privatize things. Is just, and the Marxists should even love it, because guess what we're doing? We're giving the means of production to the workers.
Exactly. Let them live or die in the marketplace.
But they have a head start, okay, because our taxes paid for that.
Yeah.
But they have to keep up from now on. Now, my bet is novel business models will outperform them.
I think you're right.
Any place where they can prove me wrong, the way that they prove me wrong is by becoming productive members of society and producing more than they consume.
For the first time, they would have the incentive to actually be more efficient, because people could leave, people could quit. They wouldn't be forced to attend those schools. But before we go on with the call, I think we need to talk about Edge Wallet.
Please.
Okay.
I thought you were going to.
You get edgy when you don't do that.
If you've been hearing us talk about cryptocurrencies, Edge Wallet is worth checking out. It's available on iOS or Android. This is a mobile wallet that gets loaded on your cell phone, and it allows you to buy, sell, trade, securely hold your cryptocurrencies. It's controlled by you. You own your own money. It has support for BTC, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum tokens, Monero, Ripple, Stellar, many, many more. It's a veteran team that's been around since 2014. Their motto is secure your freedom. You can find out more at edge.app. That's edge.app. So
I use Edge Wallet. It's a great wallet.
Yeah, I do too, and I just recommended it be loaded today to someone.
That's right.
Yeah. Actually, we paid somebody today. That was kind of cool. You did.
Indeed. All right, so...
but you're not going to say you edged somebody today.
God, no.
Okay, good.
Ouch.
Yeah, you see, you can't do that. You can't. You can say I'll koinomi you, and people will figure it out. But don't say you'll edge them, because that's you're offering more than you're biting off.
Those are a couple of words you'll never hear come out of my mouth. But that's fine. No, I promise you.
All right. So what else do we need to know about the campaign?
Basically, the whole point when I brought up the idea of the flea market would basically be to compromise with individuals that are voluntarist and with individuals that are more statist. So you could tell them you're still going to have the majority of the services that you're paying for. They're just going to be paid for voluntarily without us, mandating you come to the city hall every year, stand in line for an hour because everybody waited till the last day, just like you, and waste everybody's time.
Right.
Well, nobody loves
and you'd be getting goods and services out of it. You'd have a reason to participate in this because you want to go buy some really cheap stuff.
Well, nobody loves voluntarism more than I do, and nobody thinks you've got a great idea there.
It is a good one.
I think it's exciting that he's in a two-way race. Now, is the filing window closed? Can somebody else throw in and make this a three-way?
The window's completely closed. I filed on the last day. In fact, I jumped into the race 6 days before the deadline came, and it was a pain in the rear to get all of those signatures.
Wow,
so
how many
I'm
did you have to
surprised
get?
I got them at all.
Yeah.
I had to get 25, which doesn't sound like a lot, but typically when somebody sees a young kid walking up to them with a clipboard, they usually think, okay, this guy's trying to sell me something.
Right.
How old are you?
I'm 21.
Oh, yeah, you're just a pup.
I've done this. I've tried to collect signatures, and it's not easy. And you get a lot of rejection.
Ever been to New Hampshire?
No.
He lied and said he was going to move here, and then I guess changed his mind or something like that.
No,
maybe it wasn't
I was just flat broke and didn't want to be homeless.
Well, I'll tell you what, we need your kind up here. So if your aspirations to mayordom don't pan out where you are, I hope you'll.
What makes it interesting?
Stick out your thumb and get up here in the summer.
Up here,
man.
you don't have to
get
you don't have to get signatures. You can just throw in $5 and you're in.
I'm just going to say this real quick. First of all, I will say that it's great that it's a two-way race because it actually opens up the opportunity to make a meaningful impact.
Sure, you're going to get coverage. You're going to get media.
But I'm like, what's the point of going to New Hampshire after I thought about it for a while? Because it seems to me what kind of progress is there? I mean, 20,000 people said they'd show up, but it turned out to be like a couple hundred potheads.
No, that's not true. That's not true at all.
First off,
there's been more than 2,000 people that have moved here.
Well, there are definitely potheads among us, and I'm one of them, but the reality is there are all kinds of people up here. There's families. Porkfest is more or less a Christian children's camp now, but that's fine with me because there's also Forkfest for your couple thousand potheads. And there's, Forkfest. There's also, there are a lot of tribes up here, you know? There's the Keeniacs, we're one tribe. The Manchkins are a totally different group. The Graftons are...
That's not even true. There's different tribes in Manchester.
Right. Yeah.
So there's more libertarians here than you could possibly even know. I mean, that has resulted in more political success in this one geographic area for libertarians than the entire Libertarian Party. I'm trying to answer your question. Libertarians have been getting elected. They're elected as Republicans and Democrats, and there are like a couple of dozen of them in the state house. They helped pass the end of the death penalty that ended today due to a veto override by the state house and Senate. That happened.
What year did we trigger the move?
2016.
2016. Okay, so when we trigger the move, the signers have 5 years to get here, which means we're halfway through the arrival of whatever number of movers is actually going to arrive.
Hasn't started.
Yeah, and we're 3,000, 4,000 now?
movers.
So we've got a lot of movers. We've got some people who have left. We've got some people who have disaffiliated with the Free State Project. Yep. And as a result of that, I've created the Live Free or Die Project in order to encourage those people who don't like the FSP Incorporated to move to New Hampshire anyway, because you don't have to like them to benefit from them being here.
Yeah, if you care about freedom, there's no better place to be. It's just a fact.
And it is a fact. And another fact is we're out of time. But I want to thank you for tuning in. I encourage you to tune in tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern here on Free Talk Live. Thanks for joining us. Today was Chris, Ian, and Rich.
Are you concerned that liberty, free market economics, and the values that made America great are no longer taught in schools? Well, so am I. So I got my son the Tuttle Twins children's book series.
My name is Jack, and I'm 11 years old, and I just started the Tuttle Twins. So far, I have learned that some people can use the government to ruin the economy and destroy people's businesses.
Give all the young people in your life a chance at reason and clear thought, because they're not going to get it at school. There are 9 books in the series, and each one teaches a set of ideas that children aren't getting elsewhere. Go to TuttleTwins.com and use coupon code FTL to get 40% off. Again, that's TuttleTwins.com.